So this is an addition to the earlier video lessons about relationships. And hopefully you can take a moment and go back and see those if you have not seen them, because it'll make a lot more sense. Basically, our fundamental concept is that all phenomena are expressions of a fundamental principle of a dualized charge, a plus and a minus in relationship, attraction and repulsion at the level of the atom, at the level of the galaxy, and everything in between. So the question that was asked, excellent question, is how about trauma? Does it make the three principles relationship concept invalid? And my answer is no, that it makes it even more useful and more interesting. And let's talk about that a little bit. Our basic idea is that the plus and the minus is what could be called Hollywood marriage, where the pressure is on each other person to meet the person's needs. And the needs were formed in childhood. So the other person really doesn't have much to go on. You know, they have an initial attraction and all that, but they don't really know what the other person needs at first. And my earlier videos are about how that makes an unsustainable relationship. It's very, very difficult because inevitably, after the curtain falls and the credits roll and the movie ends and they ride off into the sunset, eventually at some point it starts to not work as well. The novelty wears off. So the lesson, the main concept is we're introducing a third presence. We're using consciousness to introduce a third presence in the relationship. And the third presence is the mutual intention. What is it I am trying to do here? We set an intention, and every day we wake up in the morning and we try to perform to that intention. And what the other person is doing is not so much of a problem. You know, that's their problem if their performance to their intention is lagging or something like that. We're doing our best every day to perform to our intention. It takes the pressure off the other person, and it makes the relationship into a form of sadhana, or spiritual practice, in which we are every day doing our best to be as mindful and conscious in the relationship as possible. So the question is about developmental trauma and how does that impede or support the model? And my answer is developmental trauma, first of all, let's understand it. Developmental trauma is when we had needs that were programmed. It's all humans have programs for what they need. And when those needs are either denied or betrayed, that is, it can be an act of omission or commission, doing something that shouldn't have happened or not doing something that should have happened. That's developmental trauma. And it can be different from event trauma, which often has one particular incident. Whereas developmental trauma can be kind of slow cooking. They're gradually developing. And it has been said that developmental trauma cuts deeper, is a harder wound to recover from than event trauma, and that a person who's had developmental trauma becomes a magnet for event trauma later in life. They are so-called accident prone, and I would say they're also relationship prone. So in developmental trauma, let's remember that it's not black and white. It's many shades of different gradations, many possibilities. A little bit, a little more, and then it's always balanced by the amount of resources that were present in the field. Ideally, there are sufficient resources to float the system and allow equilibrium to exist. But with developmental trauma, there will be a constant drag And under certain situations with certain stimuli, the person will involuntarily go into a difficult response. I am convinced that there are effective remedies for developmental and event trauma, and I rely specifically on the Peter Levine model and the Polarity Therapy model, in which when we have trauma, we become fixated. The flow between the two poles gets distorted. And so the therapeutic approach is to restore flow across the entity, the relationship as a energy field. And we do that in a body-centered way. We do it in a slow way. And acknowledging that the more trauma has been there, the more difficult it's going to be in relationship. And when that surge of involuntary anxiety appears, we're going to have fewer resources to really roll with it and work with it. Our chances of maintaining consciousness during that kind of sequence is going to be much lower. However, if we can learn the tools and the body low, slow loop and the boundary practice, the resonance practice, if we can learn these methods and remold our own autonomic nervous system, and meanwhile, if we can start to use, take the pressure off the other person, because in a crisis, a traumatized person will look to that other person so urgently to get their needs met. And the other person won't really know what they're talking about, really, because they weren't there when those developmental sequences unfolded. So we want to begin a program of therapeutic progression and begin to remold the autonomic nervous system. And meanwhile, in the relationship, we want to every day just start to go, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm trying to perform to that, to my intention. I want to be the best husband, the best father, the best lover, the best friend, the best confidant, the best guide, the best listener, the best everything, conversationalist. I want to be the best I can in relation to the intention. The pressure on me is about how I am with the intention. And if the other person is not able to meet my needs, it's much less pressure on me, less pressure on them, which hopefully will allow them to also feel less pressure and also orient to their intention as well.